And we're live, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Clerk, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to this council meeting on February the 12th. I'll call this meeting to order, and we will start off with O Canada and ask if you are able to please rise. All right, we'll now look to Councillor DeLeo for the land acknowledgement. Councillor DeLeo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. The town of Wasaga Beach acknowledges it is located upon the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people of the Three Fires Confederacy. We also acknowledge that the people of the Wyandot Nation also inhabited these lands. We acknowledge that these nations were sovereign nations existing before the arrival of settlers. We respect the spiritual interconnection among these nations to the land and to the water. We also acknowledge that waterways near us have a long history predating European arrival. Since time immemorial, waterways were the lifeblood of the indigenous people by trade and hunting routes. We are dedicated to inclusivity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in our future stewardship of the land and the longest freshwater beach in the world. In the spirit of reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity of learning to be sustainable caretakers of the land and waterways for all future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miigwech. And before we carry on in the agenda, I'd just like to mention the absolute awful tragedy in Tumber Ridge. It is just so tragic, and it's so unfortunate that we're starting to see these types of things happening in our great country. And so I have asked staff to lower all of our flags to half-mast for respect for these families and the victims. And our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers certainly go out to them. We'll now move on to the next item, item number 2, which is disclosure of pecuniary interests, and I have none before me at this time. If at some point throughout the meeting you feel you have a pecuniary interest, please let us know at that time. Item number 3 is the adoption of the agenda with the recommended motion that the contents of the agenda for February 12th, 2026 be approved as circulated. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Councillor DeLeo, seconded by Councillor Belanger. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 4, the approval of the minutes. The minutes of the regular council meeting of January 29, 2026. And those minutes that was held be adopted as circulated. Questions or comments on these minutes? Seeing none, a mover and a seconder for this, please. Moved by Councillor Tim, seconded by Councillor Eagle. All in favor? That motion carries unanimously. Item number 5 is the public meeting, and this public meeting under the Municipal Act Elections Act proposed ballot question for the upcoming 2026 municipal election. And I'll now look to Carly for a staff presentation on this item. Good morning, Carly.
Good morning, Your Worship. Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. So, good morning, Your Worship and members of council and members of the public. So, my name is Carly Murdoch, and I'm the Deputy Returning Officer for the town of Wasaga Beach. And as just mentioned, this is a public meeting that's legislated under the Municipal Elections Act to provide the opportunity for electors to present their comments to council on whether or not council should place a question on the 2026 municipal election ballot. So this question would ask electors whether the town should continue with its current at-large electoral system or move towards a ward-based system. So this meeting is being held to support transparency. No decision is being made during this meeting and no position is being advocated. It's my role as Deputy Returning Officer just to explain the process, outline the implications of the ballot question, and to ensure residents and council have a clear and accurate information. So give me 1 second. Is everybody able to see the next slide? I'm getting something a little bit different on my part. There we are. So council has identified the review of the town's electoral system as a strategic priority. And as a result, council may consider placing the following question on the 2026 municipal election ballot in order to seek a clear and direct mandate from the electors. And that question is, are you in favor of moving to a ward system? So should council choose to adopt the bylaw being presented later in the meeting today, eligible electors will be asked to vote yes or no on this question during the 2026 election. So the Municipal Election Act sets out a clear process for placing a question on the ballot. First, the question must be clear, concise, and neutral, capable of being answered only with a yes or no, and the wording of the question, which I just presented to you, was approved by council previously. Second, council must provide notice and hold a public meeting, which is what this one is today, to inform residents of its intention to pass a bylaw to place a question on the ballot. And third, council must pass that bylaw authorizing the question. And for the 2026 election, that must be passed no later than March 2nd, and that bylaw is being presented later today at this meeting. So if the bylaw is adopted, the question will be included on the municipal election ballot and voted on by eligible electors. So what's important for both electors and council to bear in mind when determining whether or not to add a question to the ballot is really how the results of the question are implemented. So whether the result of a ballot question is binding, meaning that council must act upon it, really depends on voter turnout and voting results. So in order to be binding, 50% or more of eligible electors must vote, and more than 50% of those voters must be either yes or no for their vote. So a majority yes from those voters would require that council implement a ward system. There would be no choice, and it would have to move forward with this within a reasonable time frame. A majority no would prevent implementation of a ward system for 4 more years. So if turnout by voters is less than 50%, the result of the question is not binding. And in that case, council just may consider the outcome as advisory and then decide how to proceed. As with anything, and as with every election, obviously public participation matters, voter participation matters. It is important to emphasize the fact that the effectiveness of any ballot question is tied directly to voter participation, not just voter turnout, but voters actually answering the question on the ballot. In 2018, the town had a rather large voter turnout, and even though 58% of voters voted yes for a ward when this question was last introduced on a ballot, we only had 38% of voters who actually turned out who voted. So people just didn't vote on the question. So that's why this is so important. So the Municipal Election Act requires that a minimum threshold of voter turnout be achieved in order for the results to be binding on council. And more broadly, strong participation obviously helps ensure that the outcome accurately reflects the will of the community. So I would therefore encourage all eligible electors not only to participate in the 2026 municipal election, but also to carefully consider and cast a vote on the ballot question itself, if approved, so that council is provided with a clear and representative mandate moving forward. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Carly. And we'll now look to the Deputy Clerk. Do we have any folks online or in council chambers that wish to speak to this today? Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nobody registered to speak.
All right. I'll then just ask if there's anybody who's joining us online here who wishes to speak to this item. Seeing nobody, I'll now look to members of council for questions or comments. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Ego.
Yes, Your Worship, and through you, thank you. Carly, is the town allowed to advertise, say, on the electronic board at the Recplex, that this question will be on the ballot?
Through you, Your Worship, that's an excellent question, and the clerk and I have a rather robust communication strategy in place that should council choose today to pass that bylaw, and we do place the question on the ballot. There will be, we'll be using the electronic signs, we'll be using posters, we'll be using social media ads. We're going to be using our own our own elections website to get that information out there to voters. We've also just held a public information meeting on January the 26th, and it was really well attended. We had over 50 residents attend that meeting, just again to get that information out there. And we've used Curbeck signs. We're also going to be having on the actual election day. Our plan is to start using some of our volunteers from town staff who will be working the election. That as people line up and as they come to get their ballots, that we start educating them again. We use that as another opportunity to educate people on the ballot questions so that they understand what the question is asking, so that they can answer intelligently.
Thank you.
All right, any further clarifying questions from members of council? All right, seeing none, before I move on, I just want to go back to you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Is there anyone who has registered while we've been chatting here, or are we good to move on?
No further registrations, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing that there is no one else who wishes to speak to this, either from the public or from council, we do have a recommended motion, and that is that the report titled 2026 Municipal Election Ballot Question Public Meeting and Bylaw to the council meeting of February 12, 2024 be received for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Councillor Tim, seconded by Deputy Mayor Snell. All in favor? That carries unanimously. And I'll just make a note here that Councillor White is not with us today. He is away, and he will be back to our next meeting. And having taken that vote, I will now declare this public meeting closed. Moving on to item number 6 in the agenda is presentations, and 6.1 is the Henson Draft Development Charge Rates presentation. We do have consultants here from Henson Consulting Limited today to provide council with a presentation pertaining to the draft development charge rates. And I'll pass this over to our CFO, Jocelyn, first to say a few words, and then pass that on to the Henson Group for the presentation. Good morning, Jocelyn.
Good morning, Mayor Smith and members of council. So thank you. Yes, we have Stefan Kresnowitz here from Henson, who's going to walk us through the development charge draft rates that are being proposed, as well as provide us with some information about the DC process and the changes in the DC Act. And then I believe we also have Danielle Tavoli also joining us from Henson. But Stefan will be presenting the presentation. So with that, if I could, I'll turn it over to Stefan.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Good morning, Stefan. The floor is yours, sir.
Good morning, Your Worship. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Jocelyn, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen. I think that's the arrangement we have. So if you could just confirm that that's coming up on your screens there.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, Hempson's been retained by the town to undertake actually 4 separate municipal finance studies for you. A development charges study, a study of community benefits charges, and a review of both the building permit fees and the planning fees. And today's presentation is really going to focus on the results of that first study, the development charges background study. My presentation will take around 20 to 25 minutes, if that's okay. But if you want to skip ahead and look at the calculated rates, you'll find them on slides 12 and 13 of your presentation. I wanted just to spend most of my time speaking about the rates that we've calculated and the key inputs that go into them, specifically the development forecast for the town, the historical service level calculations, which set limits on how much infrastructure can be funded from development charges, the capital works that are set out in the rates, the rates themselves and how they compare to rates that are imposed by neighboring municipalities, and then, as Jocelyn said, the process that council must undertake before considering and ultimately adopting a new development charges bylaw. For those who sort of are new to this altogether, development charges are fees that are imposed on development to pay for growth-related capital costs. So it's capital costs only, and only to the extent that they are required to expand facilities, expand the capacity of infrastructure to meet the needs of new development in the town. The town plays an important role as the calculator of development charge payments for other jurisdictions, including the County of Simcoe, and collects funds on behalf of the county and remits those funds to the county, as well as the school boards. But this study is really only looking at the charge that's imposed by the town for the services that the town provides. The county has a separate process, and so do the school boards. The principle behind all of this is that growth should pay for itself, so that the burden of funding infrastructure expansion is not borne by the existing residents of Wasaga Beach. Development charges are imposed by bylaw, and the town has 2 bylaws that are currently in force, both of which were passed in May 2021. The first one is imposed across the town for a whole range of general and engineered services, so soft services and hard services. And the second one is only applies to development that occurs within the beach area. I'll show you a map of that in a second. So just to be clear, every development in Wasaga Beach pays the charges under the first bylaw, and then development in the defined beach area pays both the townwide charge as well as the beach area charge on top of that. Both bylaws expire towards the end of May this year, and so our process is designed to bring a new bylaws for you in advance of that date. Before you pass the bylaw, you have to undertake a background study, and that's what we've been retained to help you with. And there's quite a prescribed process for doing the study and calculating the rates, which is set up on the screen here. Step 1 of the process is to do a forecast of future development. Step 2 is to identify the infrastructure needs associated with that forecast. Step 3 is to look back over the last 15 years and establish the service levels that have been provided in the town. And as I said earlier, that sets a limit on what you can fund moving forward. Step 4 is to identify the costs associated with the infrastructure needs. And then from those costs, there are several deductions that need to be made that are ineligible for development charge funding. But ultimately, you're left with a pool of costs that can be funded from the rates, and they are recovered as a charge per unit on the residential sector and as a charge per square meter of gross floor area on the non-residential sector. So I wanted to just deal with each one of those major steps just very briefly. The first is the development forecast. So the development forecast we've used is based on forecasts that are set out in your new official plan, which are in turn based on forecasts established in the County of Simcoe official plan. So just 2 things about that. First of all, we've made some minor adjustments to those forecasts to account for development that has taken place since the county official plan was completed, or was amended, I should say. And second is, I want to stress that the town can always amend its development charges bylaw to reflect higher growth forecasts if and when higher forecasts are approved and when the infrastructure needs associated with the higher forecasts become known. We've used a 10-year planning horizon for calculating the rate for the soft services, starting in this year and ending in 2035. And for the hard services, we've used longer-term horizons to 2041 for the water, sewer, and the storm, and to 2051 for the roads and related services, because we have a better understanding of the long-term roads infrastructure needs. I'm not going to go through every figure on the screen here, but I just want to highlight, first of all, that there's much more development being forecast for Wasaga Beach in this background study than there was in the background study that led to the bylaws that were passed in 2021. And there are also one or two changes in the forecast that affect the rates that I'll be presenting to you in a moment. In particular, is that there's more job growth being forecast relative to the amount of population growth. And this has the effect of shifting the burden somewhat of the charge away from the residential sector and towards the non-residential sector. So if you look at the second column of figures here over the next 10 years, the forecast is premised on around 3,400 new dwellings and 4,000 people, including 7,500 people housed in those new dwellings, about 733 new jobs, and 62,000 square meters of building floor space. And then two columns to the right of that, to 2051, it's 7,300 new dwellings, 10,000 more people, including 16,000 people in those new dwellings, and 4,000 jobs, or almost 200,000 square meters of floor area. Another requirement of the background study is that the town consider area rating of charges to reflect the different needs for services in different parts of the town. We've kept the current approach to setting the charge, which has been a long-standing approach in Wasaga Beach, and that is a uniform charge across the entire town for most of the services. But where we have this this beach area that's defined on the map there, for specific wastewater infrastructure needs, there's this additional charge for that area. We've done a lot of work on the historic service levels, and as I said, this is an important component of the exercise and requires a lot of time, for which I'm deeply appreciative of town staff who spent a lot of time collecting the data that's required to do this exercise. Fundamentally, this exercise is necessary because there is a cap imposed by historical service levels on what you can fund moving forward. And there have been some changes to the way this cap is established, to the legislation since the last time the background study was done. And so this has had the effect of reducing the town's ability to fund costs for certain services. And I'll tell you what those are in a minute. The cap does not apply for water, wastewater, and stormwater services. There's a requirement under the Act that future capital costs that are included in the charge must be a reflection of council's intentions to provide services moving forward. And so to that extent, we've worked very closely with staff in each of the departments to ensure that projects that are included in the development charge capital program are projects that are already reflected in the town's capital budgets, financial forecasts, and approved master plans. This is a summary here of the costs that have been included in the charge for all of the services for which we've calculated a charge. And I'm just going to move left to right on everything that's in bold in the table here. So first of all, on the left there, you can see the list of services for which a charge has been calculated. There's been no change to this list, with the exception that you'll see two services there saying land acquisition. This is one of the new requirements of the legislation, is that land acquisition have its own charge, and so there are two land acquisition charges for the two planning horizons that have been stripped out from the other services. And we now, where you now have a public works charge, that has been rolled into the roads and related charge. And then I'm going to move now to the line second from the bottom and just sort of highlight how the costs have been allocated and what's been included in the charge rates. So you can see the gross cost of all of the projects for all of the services is just over $400 million from now to over the next 10 years and to 2051. And the vast majority of that, about 2/3 of that, is related to the roads and related service. We have removed from those costs any grant or subsidy funding you're going to receive from other levels of government. Obviously, those are not eligible for DC funding. We have also removed any portion of the cost that is considered to benefit the existing residents of the town, and there are considerable benefit to existing shares that have been removed in the road service, as you can see. We've also applied any development charge reserve funds that the town has on hand to the costs. And then I'm skipping ahead to the column to the extreme right there. We have also removed from the charge any costs that are going to benefit development that occur beyond our planning horizons. So in many of the cases of the soft services like recreation and library, there's a lot of, and parks and fire, there's a lot of infrastructure being planned for that will be oversized for development beyond 2035, and the cost of that oversizing has not been included in the charge. And similarly, there's one or two roads projects which are sort of generational investments, where things like a new vehicular bridge crossing over the Wasaga River, where we've excluded a portion of the costs and consider that as post-2051 benefits. So the bottom line is that of the $400 million program, just under half of that, about $195 million, has been brought forward to the charge calculation. As I said before, the final step in the charge is to allocate the costs between the residential and the non-residential sectors. We've also accounted for any interest costs that might be required in order to finance the works, and that's included in the rates that you see here. The residential calculated rates are shown on the right. And we've kept the same rate structure that you have in place so that there are higher rates calculated for the larger unit types that can accommodate more people. It's $39,000 for a single or a semi-detached unit, $32,000 for a row, and then smaller charges for the smaller apartment and seasonal park model trailer unit types. And on the left there in the pie chart, you can see how the charges break down by the services. So 70% of the residential charge is for the engineering services of roads, water, wastewater, and storm, roads being the biggest component. And then about 30% of the overall charge is for the general services, of which indoor recreation is the biggest component. And much of the indoor recreation charge is actually related to funding outstanding debt repayments for the TPOL facility. On the non-residential side, the charge is $277 per square meter, and 90% of it is related to the engineered services, including 50% related to the roads. We don't have a residential charge for some of the general services like recreation and library, because the need for those services is really driven by population and the residential sector. This table then just shows you how the newly calculated charge, which is, by the way, the maximum charge you could impose, but of course you can impose whatever charge you wish. You're not bound by the charges we calculate here. But this is the maximum charge you could impose on a single detached unit of $39,180. And your current charge is actually a little bit higher than that. It's about 7% higher than that, $42,000 a unit. So the maximum charge would be $3,000 yet less per unit. It's not a reduction on every service evenly. And you can see that, particularly when we look at the water and the storm drainage, the reduction is much greater than some of the other services. And indeed, some of the services you see an increase, like, for example, wastewater and library and indoor recreation. So some of this is resulting from the changes to the Development Charges Act that I mentioned that are limiting the town's ability to calculate a higher charge for the general, particularly for the general services. But some of the changes to the of the changes arising here result from changes to the capital programs, particularly on the water and the storm drainage side of things. We have fewer projects than we did 5 years ago. And some of these shifts are because of the growth forecast that I mentioned. Because if we look at the non-residential calculated charge, you can see that that one is increasing quite substantially from about $181 a square meter to $277 a square meter, an increase of 53%, particularly on the engineering services side of the ledger. So I just wanted to spend my sort of remaining minutes showing you how the current charges that are in place in the town and the calculated charges stack up against some of the other charges that are in Simcoe County, in the northern part of Simcoe County, some neighbors to the west in Gray County, and in the cities of Barrie and Orillia. So what this is comparing is the total charge that's paid by a developer when he or she comes to the counter. So it incorporates the county charge, which is shown in red, and it also incorporates in gold the townwide charge, and where there are area-specific charges, like in the beach area, they are shown in green. And the Wasaga Beach charges are highlighted with the 4 red arrows. And so we've got 2 there that show the current and the calculated charge in the beach area with the green. And we have 2 that show the current and the calculated charge outside the beach area, which is going to be the vast majority of development that pays the non-beach area charge. So some points to note. The current development charge outside the beach area of $57,000 per unit is just below the mid-range of the municipal comparators here. And the calculated charge outside the beach area of $54,000 a unit is just below the charge that's in Elmvale in the township of Springwater. And then if you look at the beach area charge, the new development charge is $60,000 per unit, and that would be below this current $66,000 per unit. But both of that are sort of squarely in the middle of the benchmark range. And then on the non-residential side, we're going to see some more shifts to the relative position of Wasaga Beach within the benchmark range because of the change to the non-res DCs. So the current charges in and outside the beach area are $244 per square meter and $320 per square meter. So those are the current charges, and they're just below the middle end of the range, or the mid part of the range. And then the newly calculated charges, the higher charges, they are at $340 per square meter outside the beach area, and $384 per square meter within the beach area. Still below, the non-res charges we see in Collingwood and in New Tecumseth, for example, but certainly now above the middle of the benchmark range. These are the beach area charges that we've calculated. Just wanted to reference and just recall that these are only for wastewater works within that beach area. So just wanted to finish up, Your Worship, with talking about process for about 30 seconds. One of the next steps in the process is to review the bylaw. There's quite a lot of work to be done on the bylaw to make it compliant with all of the legislative changes that have happened to the Development Charges Act over the last few years. We will be reviewing with staff the exemptions that are now required and the non-statutory exemptions that Wasaga Beach has in place. And there's now a requirement, too, to develop a local service guideline for the town that will define exactly what a developer is responsible for by way of infrastructure within their subdivision when they subdivide versus what they're going to be paying for in their development charge. And, most of the technical work now being complete, we did present these rates to senior management in late January. We're presenting them to you today, and we are hoping for your blessing to proceed with drafting a background study, which we hope to release at the end of February, and that would allow for a public meeting, which is required under the Act to be held at the end of March, and a bylaw to be brought forward for your consideration on April the 30th. After the bylaw is passed, you should know there's a 40-day window where anyone can appeal the rates or any of the provisions of the bylaw, and those appeals are heard at the Ontario Land Tribunal. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I feel I may have gone over time, and I do apologize, but I'm happy to answer questions.
No worries at all, Stefan. Thank you very much. This is important stuff for sure, so we appreciate it. Jocelyn, before I go to council, anything you wish to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, at this time, I think this has covered where we're at in the process very well and what we have left to still move forward with. So I'm good with this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll look to members of council for questions or comments. Councillor Belanger? You're muted, Councillor.
Through the mayor, I think we'll have an opportunity as we look at discounts and exemptions to look at, as we have new development, there may be pockets where intensification is warranted, and that possibly it doesn't affect neighboring properties or that type of thing because it's all new. And I just want to ensure that we look at opportunities to possibly encourage that. I have said for a long time, as I have a concern that we've been a very fast-growing town as far as population. We've been one of the fastest growing in Canada for quite some time, and at some point to service that population, we need people to be able to afford shelter or homes or any form of home to fill those moderate or lower paying jobs that are required to serve this population. So again, as a town, we're missing the middle intensification that many towns have, and I think it needs to be encouraged. That's my only point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now look to Councillor Timms. Just advise, Councillor Timms, just advise Council, if you do have a question, please use your hands up so as that I can see that on a regular basis. Great, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Timms.
Thank you. I just wonder if Stefan could clarify something for me that jumped out. It's regarding the bridge. And I think I said that development charges would be postponed till 2051. It's very often a question that people ask me, when are we going to get a bridge? And I thought it was part of a 10-year plan. I don't know if that's something that could be responded to now, but just for my curiosity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to Kevin for this one, or Jocelyn.
Your Worship, perhaps if Kevin would like to respond, I'll just add in my understanding is the only piece that had been at one time in our 10-year forecast was the pedestrian bridge, which has now been, I believe, moved beyond the 10-year timeline. And then the vehicular bridge is well beyond the 10-year forecast and has never been part of the current 10-year forecast. And if Kevin, if you have anything to add, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you. So we did an environmental assessment to identify alternate bridge crossing locations, probably 2014. It was early on in the planning process. And that identified the crossing at 18th Street, as you know, opposite Veterans Way and River Road West. The challenge with it's always, and it still is in our tenure, but our tenure is every year it's evaluated and priorities are adjusted based on basically the reality of financing these priorities, right? So that bridge in itself, I think through the EA was actually, the recommendation was a phased approach where, to Jocelyn's point, phase one would be more of a 3-meter pedestrian crossing, which could accommodate emergency services if necessary. And then phase two would be the expanded bridge for the full traffic movements. And that rationale was really identified from a costing perspective. But when you start to get into the 10-year capital plan and you look at competing priorities from the beachfront, from River Road West, from intersection improvements, from Molesley Street west of 45th, we have to kind of apply some reality to that as well. And so that bridge certainly is necessary in the future when we look to intensify at some of the nodes from Old Molesley Village and certainly the beachfront. But it's currently identified to advance detailed design, I believe, in 2037. And then in 2039 is when it's currently identified in the forecast. So we continue to refer at staff level to the 10-year forecast, but in most cases, we actually have more of a 20-year time frame established. But so it is a phased approach, and it isn't in the current tenure because we know there are other competing transportation priorities, not to mention water, wastewater, stormwater, and other related priorities that we simply can't afford to do it all in the tenure. Hopefully that helps, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I think it does, and I see the councillors nodding yes. All right, we'll now move on to Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. If I could ask Stefan for clarification as well. On page 6, you referenced a projection of 733 new jobs, and it looked like an accumulative total to the end of that length of term in terms of the years. This council in 3.5 years has secured probably more than that number of jobs between the two high schools, Costco, our new beachfront hotel, etc. Were those confirmations of projects forthcoming? Have those been included in those projections? Because they seem quite low, is my first clarification question, please.
So I'm not sure that we would have captured necessarily in those individual projects in the forecast. And truth be told, the distinction between the employment that occurs within the next 5 years and then when the 10 years and then the period after that is it's not mapped out by individual development. I would say I can see here that a lot of the employment forecast growth is sort of back-ended. And part of that, I think, is that a lot of the population growth sort of accelerates through the period. But I'm happy to cycle back with staff and just make sure that what we have for the 10 years, is properly picking up the jobs that are associated with the institutions and the commercial retail that you just mentioned.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you for the follow-up, Your Worship. And that was my concern, was that you're probably using prehistoric data where we haven't seen this kind of employment growth in previous years. This has been unheard of. So I definitely just want to make sure that we're capturing that, because I know that there's a lot of stuff in the pipe as well, where I could see that number increasing significantly over that projected time. The second question was on slide 15, where you mentioned about sort of breaking down the increased fees and the percentage rate that influences that based on the individual categories. What jumped for me was 53% increased fee in the library, 7% indoor rec. There were reductions on all other lines other than wastewater, naturally. What brought you to those calculations and increasing those two categories in particular?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a lot of moving parts here, so it's sometimes quite difficult to nail it down exactly. So there will be legislative constraints at play here for some of the services. So, for example, when we calculate service levels now, or at least 5 years ago, we used to do it on a 10-year historical window, and that's now been increased to 15 years. And the second thing is that land has been stripped out of the eligible costs that we can use to calculate service levels. So the effect of those two legislative changes have reduced the envelope of funding that's available for some of these general services. So that's part of what I think is going on in parks and fire, and may also be going on in library and recreation as well. The second part of this is that there will have been changes to the costs that were included in the services from what was included 5 years ago. So, for example, in recreation now, a huge chunk of what we're funding moving forward is related to debt on that TPOL facility. And because there's a lot of interest payments on that debt, I suspect that that is driving up the rate for indoor recreation in a way that it wasn't 5 years ago. So there are little nuances that are very service specific, and then there are sort of legislative changes that have affected things more broadly. And I suspect those are coming into play in a more significant way for parks and fire, for example, and on the library, and then the rec side, we may just have more capital needs and more than we did 5 years ago.
All right, thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. I think it's important to point out that, yes, although we have a beautiful library and arena, it's kind of the gift that keeps on taking. And, those interest charges of 60 million versus one third of 20 million is certainly putting us into a situation where we're going to continue to pay for that for many, many years. And unfortunately, the taxpayers need to do that. Councillor Belanger?
Yes, through the mayor, just sort of a follow-up to Councillor Tim's question. Again, we base the current projections on the financial ability of the town to carry out these projects. But obviously, from year to year, the government releases opportunities for applying for grants. So I just wanted to point out that, being Destination Wasaga, being that often governments will add additional funding for capital costs because it stimulates the economy, that some of these priorities could be moved forward as the opportunities become known to us. Is that correct?
I guess you were directing that to whom? I'm going to look to Andrew our CAO to start that off, I guess. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Belanger. That's absolutely correct. We will actively pursue opportunities for funding from other levels of government for infrastructure, and a new bridge at 18th Street, I think would absolutely be one of the things that we would be looking to try and get funding for. So you're correct.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments from members of Council before we move on? All right. Seeing none, we do have a recommended motion here with respect to the draft development charges rates, and that the report titled Draft Development Charges Rates and Presentations from Henson Consultants on the Draft Rates to the Council meeting of February 12, 2026 be received, and that the 2025 Draft DC Study Update inclusive of draft rates be approved for release to the public on February 27th through the town's website, adjusted for any directions that Council provides in this meeting, and that staff be authorized to hold a public meeting as requested under the Development Charges Act for input on the 2025 Draft DC Study on March 26, 2026. There's no other questions or comments. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for this, please. Moved by Councillor DeLeo and seconded by Councillor Timms. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you, Jocelyn. Now moving on to item number 7, delegations, and today we have no delegations. And item number 8 is the staff reports, and it is noted that the following staff reports have been pulled from the consent agenda to be dealt with under matters for consideration, and that's number 8.1, 8.4, and 8.6. Any other items to be pulled here? Seeing none, we do have the recommended motion that the following consent list items under staff reports and all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding the items pulled and moved to matters for consideration to be voted on separately. Move in a seconder for this, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Snell, seconded by Councillor Timms. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Now moving on to correspondence items, and none of those items have been pulled. Is there anyone who wishes to pull an item under correspondence? Seeing none, we do have the recommended motion that the following consent list under items under correspondence be received for information. Move in a seconder for this, please. Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor DeLeo. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Item number 10 is minutes of boards and committees. None of those items have been pulled. Is there anyone who wishes to pull something now? Seeing none, we do have a recommended motion that the consent list items under minutes of boards and committees be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Councillor Ego and seconded by Councillor Timms. All in favor? That carries unanimously. And then on to item number 11, which is matters for consideration, and we have 3 items pulled there. The first one is the item 8.1, the Fire Department year-end report, and this is pulled by Deputy Mayor Snell. Deputy Mayor Snell, do you wish to speak to this? Or before you do, maybe I'll look to the Fire Chief. Chief, do you want to give us a brief overview first?
Sure. Good morning, Your Worship, members of Council. I can give you a 90-second overview of what 2025 looked like for the Fire Department. It was another busy year. We completed 1,777 emergency calls, and we delivered 206 hours of fire prevention and education programming, as well as 295 inspections. Some of our largest achievements of the year were once again responding to multiple major structure fires. We also supported Springwater Township on a number of occasions during severe weather events. Our full-time staff completed their annual quality care medical program training, and we also completed open water and ice water recertification for all of our volunteer and full-time firefighters. We upgraded a number of our handheld portable radios, and we hosted Camp Molly, as well as our annual fire department open house. We are about 80% of the way through implementation of our new records management software, which is called First Due, and it's really helping to modernize how we approach the fire service operations on a day-to-day perspective. We purchased 2 personal watercraft to assist with marine response, and we refurbished our 1947 fire truck with support of the Wasaga Beach Cruisers. We also focused on team culture. We made sure we delivered a mental health training night, not just for our firefighters, but for their families as well. And as well a summer barbecue to ensure that all the family members are involved in understanding what happens at the fire hall. With the support of council, we worked on the fireworks as well as the fire break policy, and we continued to support the overnight warming center. And finally, one of our key areas of continued focus is on firefighter cancer prevention. So with the support of a grant we received from the Ontario government, we purchased a fit tester to ensure that all their respiratory protection is fitting properly. And we are looking forward to expanding some of those initiatives as we move into 2026. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Chief. Another great year by our firefighters for sure. A lot of hard work and dedication there. So thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a clarification question for the fire chief. In the executive summary of your report, you mentioned looking ahead into 2026 around expanding fire prevention capacity for high-risk properties. Can you sort of expand on that a little bit more, please, for council and the public's understanding of what you mean by high-risk properties?
Absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Your Worship. So I feel this falls into 2 categories. So the first being our vulnerable occupancies that we have within the town, and the second is generally smoke alarms. So first of all, vulnerable occupancies. We have 2 retirement homes, 1 care and treatment facility, as well as several care facilities located here within town. And under the fire code, these facilities are treated differently because their residents may not have the physical or the cognitive ability to escape when a fire incident occurs. So part of our requirement under the fire code as a fire department is we are required to do annual inspections and fire alarm drills with those facilities. So we're going to continue to do that and focus on those specific facilities. And also all fires that occur in vulnerable occupancies, they must be reported to the fire marshal's office and investigated. So we will continue in the long run to always focus on them as being our top priority. But smoke alarms are a concerning trend that we see in town. So over the last 2 years, we've had 3 residential fatal fires, which is very concerning for me as the fire chief and as well above the provincial average. A common factor that we saw in all of these fires was non-working smoke alarms, which of course is an entirely preventable situation. So we intend to continue all of our normal education efforts to emphasize that smoke alarms are required in all homes and on each level of every home. But one of the concerning trends that we have continued to see is that landlords in certain circumstances are failing to maintain their requirements to ensure that smoke alarms are present both in the short-term and long-term accommodations. And in fact, in 2026, just since the beginning of this year, we've already issued several smoke alarm tickets, as well as 1 charge under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act that will be requiring court attendance. So this is a good opportunity to remind landlords that and homeowners that they absolutely have responsibilities under the fire code to make sure that working smoke alarms are present. And the maximum fines under the Act is $50,000 for individuals and $500,000 for corporations, and that's just for the first-time offense. So we will continue to take a zero-tolerance approach in our community when it comes to finding situations where smoke alarms are not present, and we will use every tool available to us to safeguard, the community to the best of our ability.
All right, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Snell. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I think, in regards to the retirement homes, we saw, a great example of a well-executed plan just a couple of weeks ago with that unfortunate fire in Spring, or in Clearview, rather, in Stayner. And they brought it up at county this Tuesday. And what they said was it was a private operator and they had a fantastic plan. And the fact that they had a fantastic, well-rehearsed plan, it created a situation that although they had lots of emergency support from ambulance, paramedics, firefighters from around the area, they weren't needing to necessarily lead the situation. the owner and the operator of the facility was well prepared. So it made a night and day difference in terms of the outcome. And there were no fatalities, no significant injuries. Everybody has been rehomed in other areas. So I'm glad to see, because, you know, obviously Wasaga Beach, we have 2 retirement homes now. We will grow more, of course, as the demand is required. So I think that's really important, especially with what just happened in Clearview. So thank you for mentioning all the efforts that you guys are doing to be preventative.
Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, I'd like to think that that doesn't all happen by chance as well. There's 2 important elements in these vulnerable occupancies, including the retirement homes. So the first is the construction of these homes. They have advanced fire alarm systems, automatic sprinkler systems, fire separations that are all put in place to safeguard those residents. But on top of that, they're all required under the fire code to have fire safety plans. So those fire safety plans is what outlines the owner's responsibility to maintain the safety of the building, but as well determine what happens when the fire alarm goes off. So if there is an event in one of these facilities, the staff at the facility are required to immediately respond, of course, locate any individuals in danger and remove them. And the fire department will then respond as well to assist with evacuation and putting out the fire. But there are plans in place that if a full evacuation is required, our fire department may use our mutual aid system to call upon additional help from other fire departments. But ultimately, we would work with paramedics, police, the local hospital, the County of Simcoe Emergency Management Team and Social Services to ultimately remove those individuals to a safe location, which in our town is likely temporarily going to be the arena or the recplex, in order to buy some time to get them into long-term accommodation. So there are plans in place. But I can't stress enough that these vulnerable occupancies, they truly are a high-risk event if a fire happens there because of the number of individuals that live there. And we really need to respond quickly and appropriately to help these individuals out to prevent a disaster.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments from members of council? All right, thanks for bringing that up, Deputy Mayor Snell. I think it's very important, and as the Chief pointed out, we've already had, we've had too many deaths that were what we believe was very preventable, and I certainly hope, Chief, that the team keeps at this, keeps out there on the street, knocking on doors and doing these inspections, because I do believe that people's lives are at risk here, and we need to make sure that we're on top of that to the best of our ability. We can only hope that when charges are laid, however, that the courts take that seriously and don't just kind of fluff it off and reduce those fines and bring it back down to nothing, because that's not going to solve anything. So good work on you and the team over there as always, Chief, and keep it up for us. We do have a recommended motion that the report titled 2025 Fire Department Year-End Report to the council meeting of February 12, 2026 be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Snell and seconded by Councillor Ego. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Boulanger.
In favor.
Councillor DeLeo.
In favor.
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Snow.
In favor.
Councillor Timms.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
And that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And now moving on to the next item, which is the contract number PW 2026-2021, which is the Blueberry Trails Playground Renewal. And this is pulled by Deputy Mayor Snell, Councillor Belanger, and I believe Councillor Eagle wanted to comment on this as well. So we'll look to Kevin to just give us maybe an overview on this report, and then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I might do is, if it's okay, I'll have Lee speak to this. Lee's been intimately involved with the design and implementation for the last couple of years, so he would be best to speak to the details, and he can highlight next steps.
That'd be great. Thanks very much. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. This is a playground renewal that administration is quite pleased with the design. What we have is we have 3 different play pods that are pretty well connected. We have a swing bay, which is in the eastern side of the development. We have our senior play structure, which includes the 2 large tower features. The really cool thing about this playground is you see very few structures that have an accessible route all the way to the top. So the sensation of height adds a highly innovative approach to accessibility, which is different from any of the playgrounds that we have in our municipality right now. When it comes down to playground elements, obviously we're looking for it to be inclusive, accessible, skill development, and sensory experiences, which I feel that this design has accomplished. We are mindful when we are designing our playgrounds not to duplicate same features that we have within our playground. So our goal is to create a network of playgrounds that is collectively offers a broad range of inclusive play elements. The capacity for this playground is about 130 children, so quite large play features there. And we think the designers have done a good job of adding elements that complement both the senior play structure and the junior play element, where you can see the junior play element has the pour and play surfacing, where the remainder balance of the playground has the engineered wood fibers.
Thank you very much, Lee. All right, we'll now look to Deputy Mayor Snell. Deputy Mayor Snell?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. This is a common question, especially in new established subdivisions, that residents there are almost expecting that there should be a playground right away when homes are coming out of the ground. And especially when I've heard this anyways, in regards to the Wasaga Beach Public School, that elementary school on Sunnydale, that the school board does not provide a play structure. And so, these kids are now out in the playground or out in the field and nothing to do. And the community around there is sort of sometimes providing feedback and saying, well, why isn't the park already there? So I wanted to provide an opportunity because, some members, residents that are living in that area might be saying, well, why is this park coming before that already has something to play on? Is coming ahead of the one that's on Sunnydale, and I just wanted to give an opportunity for staff to publicly speak to that in terms of the timelines and the priorities for both developments.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. Kevin?
I'll take the lead on that, and if you want to expand, certainly go ahead. Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Snell. There's two avenues that developers pursue when developing a subdivision, and as it relates to park design and park implementation. Basically, there's an opportunity for the developer to build the park concurrently with the construction of their development at a phased approach. The playground itself, though, is a development charge related item. So in essence, we're entering into an agreement with them, and it's a development charge related improvement. The other avenue is they pay for their DCs, and that park block gets defined through our 10-year capital works forecast at an appropriate time where we can afford to do so, and we have sufficient reserves to advance that playground and resources to maintain them long term. So there's two avenues. In this particular Sunnydale Trails development, it was the latter, where we've worked with the developer to define kind of the community park block. It's not a school park. It's for the community. It's coincident. It is beside the school, and we certainly had a partnership agreement with the school to share the parking and offset the soccer pitch. This park would have been built last year. There was some, as I mentioned, with the development charges, given the current market, we weren't receiving as much of the DCs through residential development as we'd like to see. So we didn't have that reserve to advance this last year. So what we are doing now is we've scaled it back within a budget that is within line with other competing priorities. And so we're optimistic that I think we'll get this out within the next month in terms of tendering. Our goal is to have it built within the next several months, so it's substantially completed before September when the kids get back into school. But it's not necessarily, park blocks aren't necessarily advanced concurrently once residents start to occupy their homes. It's really a function of, again, the bigger, longer capital plan and where the dollars are being allocated, where the priorities are. And we do have a very comprehensive capital plan for advancing future playgrounds and new developments as well over the next 10 years. But again, that's a function of finances, competing priorities, funding, and certainly development charge reserves.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Deputy Mayor Snell, supplemental?
Thank you. Just as a follow-up and a comment, thank you for that clarification, Kevin, because I think there's, sometimes misunderstanding and, maybe the sales office is misleading information in terms of timeline or amenities or whatnot at the sales purchase time. And I think it's just important for residents to understand that this council has been very committed in putting funding behind the advancement of park developments and playground developments. We changed over and made it fully accessible, brand new at the Recplex, which is just a stunning park. It's outstanding in terms of the diversity that it offers. Arnell, that was a fantastic upgrade, much needed, very well used space. And then the new park at the West End. So it's not like it's been a slow roll, and sometimes we do have to pivot with different demanding needs and changing priorities. So I just wanted to sort of give an opportunity for you to speak to it publicly. Thank you.
Excellent points, Deputy Mayor Snell, that's for certain. Okay, next will be Councillor Belanger.
Yes, through the mayor. The reason I pulled it is similar to the Deputy Mayor. I wanted to reinforce with the public our commitment for expanding and updating our park system. I think we've done very well. We had a new park in the East End as well. I think it's important to note that I mentioned earlier that we're one of the fastest growing communities in Canada, but our 0 to 19 population is also one of the fastest growing. So this is very important. The one thing Kevin did mention, and I don't know if it applies to Blueberry Trail, but some of our parks equipment was quite antiquated and outdated, and there's new standards for safety and everything else, like the wood chips and the fibers. So I just think this is very important to a council to provide these amenities to our residents and their children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Belanger. Councillor Ego.
Thank you, and through your worship. Yes, I'm such along the vein as Councillor Belanger, speaking to a community and the areas here, and how when a playground is run down, it just reflects on the whole area. So it's beautiful to be able to see this coming along for the community, the children there, the parents. I happen to have a very small park in the end where we are here for the first time, and I see how well used even the smallest park is by every age. And it's really rewarding to what it does to a neighborhood. So not only aesthetically, which it certainly ramps it up, but for the use of it as well. And when I spoke with Leah on this yesterday, I was wondering, I'm sure most of us will recall when it was a small park, it is a small park in the West End, and I believe it's called an accessible glider was installed there. And the joy that brought to the family and to the user of it. So I asked Leah what I had seen in the photograph there, but what I learned is that all our playgrounds now, and I have this, they're ensuring there'll be a variety in all the different playgrounds of accessible equipment. So he wrote like this, if the playground does not include that amenity, as we're being mindful of ensuring a variety of accessible play options across town rather than duplicating the same feature in close proximity. So I think that is really good and can be, put out there for visitors to know what equipment is in different playgrounds, because they're all obviously going to have a variety. And back to aesthetics, I have a quote that comes to my mind all the time and seeing this improvement, and it is, a measure of a city's greatness is to be found in the quality of its public spaces, its parks and squares. And I believe that strongly. So thank you for going forward on this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ego. And yes, that family was the Burt family, Kim and Ken Burt, who came forward to speak to that glide swing that we were able to put into the park closest to their home, and we've installed in other parks. And I can tell you that their son has enjoyed it immensely, and I'm sure many others have as well. So, great news story. All right, I see Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things for Lee. I wonder about the number of children that can be accommodated in this park. Is there enough seating for the people that come with them? I see one bench and two benches and two picnic tables. Is there an opportunity as time goes on to add more? Because when I see a park that's super busy, there's always a lot of people that are sitting and enjoying watching the children play.
Through you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Timms. Yes, that was one of the feedback that we received during the presentation to the Accessibility Committee. And although it's not illustrated in this concept photo that's up on the screen right now, just on the east end of the senior play area, we have added an additional seating area for additional seating and visibility to the swing bay and to the large play structure there.
Thank you, because I think that'll really make a difference with how long people will stay if grandparents and others can be seated. Also, I wondered, without taking a lot of time, if you could point out some of the accessible features that the children that require them will be able to enjoy, because I was trying to figure it out myself, and I don't know if there's a way of pointing it out, but I know it's a question we get all the time about accessibility in playgrounds. I do, anyways.
Yes, absolutely. And if I can maybe just ask to go to the last slide there that highlights the accessibility features. So on this slide, it demonstrates from, there's two similar looking charts there that has the accessibility play features for the junior play structure as well as the senior play structure. So as you can see by reviewing the chart, we are by far exceeding the most minimum standards there. And although there are no accessible features by ramp, which are not necessarily required, there are various by transfer and by ground level components here. So we do feel like this playground and the design provides the accessibility as well as like the inclusive and encourages the imaginative play, social skill development, problem solving, strategic thinking, as well as the motor skills of balance, core strength, hand-eye coordination, and so forth.
Your Worship?
Go ahead, Councillor.
You said that there was an accessible route to height. What did that mean?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Timms. Yes, so the accessible route is via spiral belts, which take you all the way up to the top of the tower. It's a very neat feature that, again, not many playgrounds have. A lot of the times when you think of accessibility, it's usually on the lower levels where people who have a form of a disability, they are not able to get to the highest point of the structure, which this playground does allow via the spiral belt.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to see all that.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions or comments from members of council on this? All right, I just think it's important to note, as staff have said, first of all, not always do the DCs pay the full cost of building these parks, and what they absolutely don't cover is the ongoing repairs, maintenance, and replacement. And so, although there are new parks needing to be built, there are always older parks needing rehabilitation. And as the deputies pointed out, I think this council has done a remarkable job at that so far. So we'll continue to do that, and we'll build as many and the best parks we possibly can as we move forward. Councillor DeLeo. All right. Better late than never. Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you.
All right.
Something came to mind. Is there drinking fountains in these parks for the children?
through your worship to Councillor DeLeo, no, there is no drinking fountain included in this park. It's very uncommon through my experiences that you see neighborhood parks with that kind of amenity, usually because it's just servicing the adjacent community. So people are traveling from close to home and are able to go back to get a drink when needed. Usually drinking fountains are more incorporated into community-wide parks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Excellent question. All right, we do have a motion then that the report titled Contract Number PW 2026-21, Blueberry Trail Playground Renewal, and to the council meeting of February 12, 2026 be received, and that council does hereby award contract number PW 2026-21 for the renewal of the Blueberry Trail Playground to ABC Recreation Limited for the amount of $518,797.95, excluding HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with ABC Recreation Limited, subject to approval of the content by the Director of Public Works and financial content by the Chief Financial Officer. Before I go to the question, again, $518,000, almost $519,000 to just replace what's already there. Good for the folks to hear those numbers. It's not a light number, that's for certain. All right, you've all heard the question. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll look to the clerk for the vote. Madam Clerk?
If we could just get a mover and a seconder.
Yes, thank you. That's a good idea. Moved by Deputy Mayor Snell, seconded by Councillor Eagle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Boulanger.
In favor.
Councillor DeLeo.
In favor.
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Snell.
In favor.
Councillor Timms.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And moving on to the next item, this is the short-term accommodation licensing bylaw. And this has been pulled by Deputy Mayor Snell and Councillor Belanger. Before I go to you folks to speak, I'll turn this over to Carly.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I'm here today to present the proposed short-term accommodation licensing bylaw here in a draft form as 2026-08. And this bylaw represents really the culmination of the recommendations that were endorsed by Council at the meeting of August the 22nd, 2024. Those recommendations put forward were informed by a comprehensive review of the town's existing regulatory framework and an extensive public engagement process. This included a dedicated Engage Wasaga page, a survey with more than 500 respondents, in-person engagement sessions with residents and members of the tourism and business community. And the feedback that we received was consistent, that while short-term accommodations contribute meaningfully to tourism and local economic activity, a more modern, structured, and enforceable licensing framework was required to address ongoing compliance challenges and neighborhood impacts. So in June 2024, as you may recall, staff reported on the findings of a scan conducted using Granicus host compliance software, which identified a significant disparity between the number of licensed short-term accommodations and the number actively advertised online. And at that time, approximately 170 properties were licensed by the town, while more than 595 were advertised in the off-season, with numbers exceeding over 1,000 during peak months. So in response, Council directed staff to purchase and implement the compliance software, establish a proactive enforcement strategy, and introduce an administrative monetary penalty system. And the software became fully operational in October of 2025, and in its first month alone of implementation, more than 60 properties were brought into compliance with the bylaw. So this bylaw before you today establishes a standalone, more modern licensing regime designed specifically for short-term accommodations. So unlike the previous framework where STAs were grouped within a broader licensing bylaw, this bylaw recognizes the unique operational characteristics and enforcement needs of this sector and provides a clear and purpose-built regulatory structure. The proposed bylaw introduces comprehensive application requirements. This includes increased liability insurance coverage of $5 million and a requirement for a neighborhood partnership plan. And that plan requires operators to proactively outline site design, garbage management, parking management, and noise and nuisance mitigation strategies that directly address the primary areas of community concern. This bylaw also establishes defined licensing classes to reflect the different forms and scales of short-term accommodations that we find operating in the town. So it implements a single fixed annual expiry date of April 1st to ensure inspections and compliance are confirmed prior to peak season, and introduces a new arrears compliance inspection, which ensures that businesses in financial default to the town cannot continue to operate without resolution. From an enforcement perspective, the bylaw establishes and integrates a new demerit point system with the administrative monetary penalty framework and alongside that compliance software. So together, these tools create a structured and predictable compliance pathway where infractions carry defined consequences that can lead to suspension or revocation if issues persist, and it ensures that enforcement is not arbitrary, but graduated, fair, and clearly articulated. The inclusion of explicit guest behavior provisions, along with a mandatory renter's code of conduct, further reinforces shared responsibility between operators and guests in maintaining our community standards. Important to point out, I think, for both council and the public, is that this proposed bylaw does not alter where short-term accommodations are permitted. Land use permissions remain governed by the town's zoning bylaw. Rather, this framework strengthens how short-term accommodations are licensed and regulated within the areas where they are already permitted, and this ensures greater oversight, transparency, and accountability. This approach that's presented today is fully aligned with the project mandate presented to Council at the start of this program to conduct a comprehensive review of short-term accommodation regulation and licensing strategies, and to propose recommendations to enhance and optimize the licensing framework. And this was particularly with respect to safety, compliance, and mitigation of community impacts. So bylaw 2026-08, drafted before you, operationalizes that mandate and implements council's unanimous direction in 2024. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Very comprehensive report. A lot of hard work went into this, so thank you to you and the team for that. And I'll now look to Deputy Mayor Snell. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I had the opportunity to have a lengthy conversation with the author, with Carly, to go through, several questions that I had, and she was just so great in answering them. And I think it's really important for the residents to hear her background and executive summary to this fulsome report, because we can see it's complicated, it's multi-layered, and it was very important that we got it right. So although we're into our third year and this was a priority that was identified in our term of priorities at the beginning of this term of council, it takes time to look at other municipalities, look at other areas, look at others who have done it wrong, and make sure we've got it right. And what I really liked about this is around the community plan, because it holds the operator, and as I understand with the report, this is going to help bylaw strengthen enforcement and compliancy, especially around our hotel motels, right? That if they've got nuisance noise going on, if they've over parking, over occupancy, garbage around, whatnot, they now have some teeth to get them to behave a little better, right? Which I think is fantastic. I love all of it. But to be clear, with this bylaw, outside of those that are already established and historically there, Airbnbs are still not permitted. Can you speak to specifically Airbnbs? Because this council hears from residents, frustration and challenges, especially when we're operating in residential settings. What's the plan for the team going forward after this season, specifically in regards to an Airbnb policy, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Carly?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor. That's an excellent question, because I think that oftentimes the conversations that I have with the public, they refer to things as Airbnbs, and it's important that we understand the distinction between what we call Airbnb and what I am talking about when I say short-term accommodation. So Airbnb that we traditionally think of is a type of short-term accommodation where somebody is renting out a property or a room for a period of 30 days or less. But an Airbnb does so when the owner is not present. So that would be what people most traditionally think of. In the town of Wasaga Beach, that type of short-term accommodation is captured in things that we have like rental cottages, rental cabins, those types of things that are defined in the bylaw and defined in the zoning bylaw. But what we consider as, for example, a family home in a residential area where somebody is doing that type of renting, that is not currently permitted through zoning. So an Airbnb that we would find where a whole home is rented in, let's say, the Sunnydale subdivision, that is not permitted in our zoning bylaw at this stage, and that is something that would be captured through our compliance software and be part of our endeavor with this bylaw to bring into compliance. But we do have some properties that meet that requirement that are in, as you mentioned, historical areas that are zoned to allow that type of accommodation. Moving forward, staff have suggested at the end of this report that what we do is essentially get our house in order first. We pass this bylaw if council approves it. We administer this bylaw. We roll out to the business community, explain, through engagement how and what we expect as part of this new bylaw and as part of the new submittal requirements. And we look at this paired with our enforcement software and our new strategy. And at the end of the year, we come back to council and we bring a report to say, has this program been successful? Were we able to better mitigate the impacts that have been caused throughout our community and the complaints that we've received? And are we better supporting our businesses through our new and transparent bylaw and our new transparent expectations that we have for how they're going to operate? And at the end of that season, when we bring that report, our hope is also that it's going to be a great success and that we're going to be able to propose a pilot project, which was originally discussed in council in that 2024 meeting. This pilot project would be something where we would look at, creating a new system whereby in the new year and for the next season, business owners who are interested in operating something that we more typically consider to be an Airbnb, which is not a term, but it's a platform, so I'm just going to use that with air quotes, a short-term accommodation in an area where it's not currently permitted, where the zoning doesn't currently permit it. We would look at having a program where some of those business owners could come to us. They would have to meet the same types of rigorous standards that we have set forth in our bylaw and then some, and they would be part of what we call our tourism partnership program. And we might institute a pilot project or recommend one for 2 to 3 years so we could see how these businesses are operating in conjunction with our residential neighborhoods. And this would be on a very strict 3 strikes you're out kind of policy. And the reason why staff are looking to do this is part of the engagement process was with business owners who are running short-term accommodations currently in town in properties that are not licensed, that are not currently permitted under zoning to run. And they have received no complaints to bylaw, no complaints from their neighbors, and they're doing it well. And they're providing a different kind of accommodation that, the economy may need and something that we may need to look forward at in the future. So we want to create a program in the future that we're going to be able to gather that data in a controlled and responsible way for our community to determine whether or not in the future we might be able to expand the use of short-term accommodations within the town. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Carly. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, I just really appreciate your clarity. You have given this great thought. You've turned this, you and the team have, from my perspective, really looked at it, where I've seen other municipalities come into a bit of a shortfall because they're rushing into the Airbnb economy. They don't want to miss it. And they create a policy or procedure or fee structure and then regret it later and have to claw it back or fall into a legislative situation, which we've seen in other municipalities. So I applaud our council in taking the time to make sure that we're rolling it out and we're getting it right. So although some operators may be frustrated to hear that today is not, should this go through, it doesn't mean you get to operate as an Airbnb. But I think what it will do as well is provide some peace of mind to our residents that have illegal Airbnbs operating around them, that we are aware of where they are. We are dealing with it and proactively and communicating with those owners to try to get them to shut down. And just for clarification, in the report it mentions about having potentially down the road a public-facing directory basically of where all of these operators are. Not even talking about Airbnbs down the road, but just the current operators and their contact information, so that folks are able, should they be having an issue, a noise issue, parking issue, whatever, they're able to contact the owner directly and hopefully mitigate the situation themselves without having to necessarily involve bylaw. When do you see that rolling out? Because I think that's going to be an important tool for our public that have to deal with these nuisances in the upcoming active season. That's my final comment and question. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. Carly?
Through you, Your Worship, that's an excellent question, because should this bylaw pass, part of the implementation will be the creation of a dedicated short-term accommodation webpage on the website. Part of that webpage, I see this would be rolling out well ahead of this coming season. It's something that would be relatively easy for our staff to do, to provide that information out there. What we need to do is, once the bylaw is rolled out, is we just need to send communications, and that would be part of the rollout of the new regime, send communications to the businesses just to inform them that, how their data is going to be used and how we're going to collect it to put it on the website. But that should be something that we should have out there ahead of the season, after the application deadline. It's something that's fairly simple for us to do, but something that goes a very long way for the community in supporting transparency and in supporting and ensuring that the community feels heard with some of the concerns that we've had directed to us through our engagement process. So to answer your question in a short way, soon, hopefully. Thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Snell, go ahead.
Sorry, my sincere apologies, Your Worship. I just thought, I'm thinking about capacity. I'm thinking about staffing capacity, bylaws capacity, the business's capacity. We're rolling out MAT tax. Do you feel that the two pieces coming together are palatable at the same time for our local businesses, operators? Would be my question, please, to you.
Through Your Worship, that's an excellent question. I think that it's something that we try to address in the report, which is that obviously for individuals who are currently licensed with the town, that not a whole lot of the bylaw has changed enough that it should place a burden on them in order to fulfill their new requirements. But certain things will be new. So, for example, that neighborhood partnership plan, that's something that's completely new. It's something that I have not seen in any of our neighboring communities, but it's something that staff have been preparing for. So our idea is to, as part of that outreach to communities, that should this bylaw pass, we would have a community session that would be held in conjunction with economic development to invite all the business operators to talk about MAT tax, to talk about what's required for this new bylaw, to produce the materials that would be given to all of the businesses who either apply for new licenses or who are up for renewal, to give them opportunities to see an example of what we ask for when we're asking for a site plan. In addition to that, as the report states, we're also going to be operating a little differently this year if this bylaw rolls out. So the 60 days that we've imposed in the bylaw between an application renewal and when all of the required inspections need to be completed, that 60 days would not apply for this licensing cycle, in recognition of the fact that this is something new, that we want to work together with our business community in partnership to help them to elevate all of the properties that we have and the kind of tourism that we're getting in, just to make sure that they're on board with all of the changes. So this will be something that for this year, in recognition of all of these changes, we're going to be lenient on, and then moving forward, it should hopefully be something that they understand in a process that is easy to comply with. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carly. Next will be Councillor Belanger. Councillor Belanger?
Yes, through the mayor, I believe I'm off mute, right?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, so yes, the report is very detailed, excellent, and addresses certainly many of the concerns that were brought forward in the public engagement. I do have one concern, in that we have often spoke as a council about tourism has to pay for tourism. We have proactively gone out and hired a third party with compliance software at a significant cost They've identified and provided the data that we're talking about on the number of STAs that are legal and illegal. And my understanding is that the report is suggesting a phased-in licensing fee, which I don't believe comes close to covering the costs that we have incurred and will be ongoing. I also believe that most of our neighboring communities have a licensing fee significantly higher than what we're suggesting as a starting point. So in my opinion, although it would cause a short delay, I would suggest that we should refer this back to staff to look at that opening licensing fee and ensure that tourism is paying for tourism.
Thank you, Councillor Belanger. Anything response for that, Carly?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify, that phased-in licensing, so that fee that we currently see right now for business licensing for short-term accommodations, so in the current licensing bylaw, that was the phased-in fee that I believe from 2020 was phased in over a 3-year period. So staff recommended back in 2024 and have recommended again in this report that we do not alter the licensing fees for year 1. In recognition of the fact that any changes to licensing fees right now, ahead of the start of the tourism season might have impacts on operators. We have heard from operators that they do sometimes feel that the fees are onerous to their business. And out of respect for the fact that, there is this new system that they're going to have to be operating under, not only this bylaw if passed, but also the municipal accommodation tax. So it was really out of respect to that, but in complete transparency is something that was mentioned in 2024 as well. Our licensing fees on the whole for short-term accommodations are 60% or more beneath our neighboring comparators, except for the town of Collingwood. So staff did recommend that we do a review of these licensing fees. It's just that we recommended that review occur and take effect for the 2027 cycle. Again, in recognition of the fact that unfortunately these changes would be rolled out relatively soon in comparison to the start of the tourist season. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Anything further, Councillor Belanger? You're muted, Councillor.
I said I'll wait and hear your closing comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from staff on this matter? All right, seeing none, I'll reiterate, an excellent report. A lot of hard work went into this, very well thought out, covered, I would say, just about everything for sure. We can never catch it all because, at the end of the day, we're up against people who want to do things that simply aren't allowed to be done. And so, I think the Granicus software is going to be a huge addition to our ability to ensure that short-term rentals, illegal short-term rentals, are not happening in our community. It's not to say it won't happen, it will, but we'll be able to, pinpoint those issues and to deal with those. I do share somewhat Councillor Belanger's concern, however, about the licensing fees. They are, as you indicated, Carly, considerably lower than all of our comparators except Collingwood. The amount of work, that has gone into this, and that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, will continuously need to go into this. Granicus is going to do the scraping and it's going to tell us where the problems are, but we're still going to need the manpower and the officers to go out and to deal with that, and then to issue, warnings, possibly issue summonses, end up in court, so on and so forth. And, this council has talked quite a bit about, tourism paying for tourism. And I fully and wholeheartedly believe that short-term rentals, or Airbnbs, with your air quotes, if you will, are absolutely a huge part of the tourism economy in Wasaga Beach, and will continue to be. But there are areas of town that have clearly been mark that where this is acceptable and you can be licensed to do this. But for the vast majority of our community, the residential neighborhoods, so on and so forth, it's not allowed. And there's a reason for that. People live here full time. They work long hours, morning to night, and unfortunately, not all, but some folks who come here and rent these different places are not concerned or aware, and nor do they care, quite frankly, that the other residents, whether it be full time or even other tourists around them, are getting a good night's sleep, and they have a right to quiet enjoyment. And that's why I think most municipalities are looking at this, some moving along quicker than others. So we need to make sure that those fees are going to cover those costs, or what we've been saying, tourism should pay for tourism, just simply isn't going to be the case. And I get that there's a MAT tax being put into place here, but the MAT tax is not a cost to anyone except for the tourists or individuals who are renting rooms or cottages or houses. I go on vacation. I pay just about everywhere I go now. I pay a MAT tax or a form thereof, and in many cases pay it more than just for accommodation. It's the way it is today. And, we have to make sure that our full-time residents are not continuing to bear the costs of tourism. And that's not going to happen overnight. I understand that. We've got to make this happen, but it's going to be a slow process. But I don't think we need to slow it down anymore than it's already been slowed down for many, many years, or ignored, quite frankly, in most cases. I think that most residents I speak to absolutely agree with the MAT tax. They absolutely agree with these types of rules and regulations and licensing and limiting to where these illegal type rentals can be. I would argue that even our accommodation people who are in the accommodation business, cottage courts, motels, would probably be quite happy with the fact that we are really cracking down on illegal rentals that are taking away from their business, where they're paying high taxes commercially compared to residential. They've got overhead that goes along with that, cleaning staff, so on and so forth, and this is only going to help their business in the long run. So my concern here, although I'm thrilled with the report, my concern is that if we don't get the costing in place before we get started, again, we're going to be prolonging the amount of time that it's going to take to have tourism pay for tourism. And, we hear our residents on a regular basis talk about tax increases. And, we've had a couple of things here on the agenda today that hopefully explains to residents why there's tax increases. It's $680,000 or $18,000 or $19,000 for the replacement of a park, never mind building a new park. And wear and tear on roads, so on and so forth. So I agree with Councillor Belanger that we need to get that right. I think that fee needs to be considerably higher. And the other reason for it is I think that if folks want to take their residence and turn that into a business, that they need to have some skin in the game. They need to understand that, we're not just saying you need to enforce the rules. If you don't enforce the rules, you're going to lose your license and you're going to lose the money you paid for that license, which is significant. But 3 strikes, you're out. And, we need to be firm on that. And so, again, it's going to take a lot of time and effort. It's already taken time and effort. When I look at this report and how detailed it is, I can't even begin to imagine, Carly, the amount of time you and the team have spent putting this together. But I'm sure it's, a lot of hours and a lot of dollars that costs. So I would have no problem with referring this back either, but I'll leave it up to Councillor Belanger if he wants to move a referral motion, but I'm seeing Deputy Mayor Snell waving her hand there. So Deputy Mayor Snell, something to add? You're muted, Deputy Mayor. And and maybe frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Carly, do you want to speak to what I've just said or whatever until we get Deputy Mayor Snell back?
Sorry, surprise. Yes, I would, Your Worship. Thank you. I just think I wanted to add, just so that the public also understands that when we talk about the additional costs of enforcement, when we talk about the work that we're going to be doing to stop illegal B&Bs or Airbnbs operating, that even the cost of the compliance software, that when staff did recommend that, it was in the understanding that the enforcement would pay for itself in the sense that the administrative monetary penalty system that we will be hopefully directed to bring back to council in conjunction with this bylaw would also contribute to recuperating those costs, so that it wouldn't be a cost onto the taxpayer to enforce this bylaw. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, are you back? I see your eyes are blinking. Yeah. So you are. You go ahead.
My apologies. I'm having some Wi-Fi issues here. I just wanted to clarify, please, Carly. What I understand from the report, and again, it's such a detailed, multi-layered report, so this is why, I think it's easy to be confused. What you're proposing at this point is not applying this bylaw or the AMP's fees to allowing new Airbnbs. What you're proposing, in my understanding, is that this would be applied to existing hotel, motel, cottage courts, accommodations that are already licensed within Wasaga Beach. And that will help us to sort of get that a little more under control. And then, as you say, once all of our house is in order, then a further report can come back to council in future, making recommendations on a rollout to start permitting registered, licensed Airbnbs in appropriate areas in the community. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, and to Deputy Mayor, that's absolutely correct. That was probably much more succinct than I would have been able to state it. That's precisely it. So right now, really, for our businesses, it's status quo minus the changes that we have to our regulations, to some of the requirements. And this is based off of community feedback and techniques and strategies that we've seen work in other communities that will address the issues that we're already having with our existing licensed operators. So moving forward with this report, nothing will change for our existing operators. Any changes that we make to licensing fees, for example, right now, would apply to our current existing operators. And then if we want to, as part of this pilot project, if it moves forward with a report to council in the future, then we can re-examine as well then licensing fees that we apply to those new businesses, should we choose to do so. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Deputy Mayor, supplemental.
Thank you, Your Worship, for allowing it. And I think that's the really important piece to understand, is that this is not about fees for Airbnbs or allowing new Airbnbs to come into the community. This is strengthening policy, procedure, requirements for our existing operators, which we know as a council and as residents of this community for a very long time, they can have and have been historically problematic with noise, nuisance, over occupancy, parking all over the place, not providing proper garbage pickup. My support in this motion and in this report is that I feel it's time to empower bylaw with some AMP fees to be able to potentially, again, make tourism pay for tourism. If they're causing nuisance and they're enforcing and bringing out our bylaw and our staff to go out and deal with these matters, they're going to have to financially remit a payment for that fee and service. So I think it's just really important as we go to vote that we're not voting on Airbnbs. We're voting on this policy and procedure applying to existing businesses. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor DeLeo.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in full agreement with this report, but I am not in agreement with raising the licensing fees until 2027. Too much too soon. That's always been my motto. So, Councillor Belanger, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I think we need to give him a bit of a break for now. So that's how I stand on this one. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Belanger.
Yes, through the mayor. We've gotten into a lot of discussion, but make no mistake, we are voting on Airbnb. Because last year, it was identified in peak season that we had 1,000 illegal STAs operating, and many of those, I'm sure, were Airbnb. We had 300 complaints come into bylaw, is my understanding, last year. And I can tell you from residents that talked to me, is the bad actors generated more than one call with bylaw. The bad actors likely generated 2 to 3 or more calls per season, which tells us that there was 600 illegal short-term rentals that were operating and not having an impact except to our economy. Those people were visiting and spending money in Wasaga Beach. So I do have a concern as to what we're talking about. And I agree that the report clearly identifies that we are hearing our residents. We understand what the complaints have been, and we're putting a system of demerit points and penalties in place to make sure that bad actors would be in fear of losing their license relatively quickly. But again, to suggest, like, I can't remember the exact amount we paid for the initial software and third party. I believe it was in the neighborhood of $60,000, and there's an annual fee that's significant every year to continue that process. And frankly, $200 when we have right now that it's not uncommon in peak season for them to be charging $500 a night, and to say that $200 is excessive is ridiculous. I believe Tiny is charging $1,200 for their licenses. So I agree that this has been a long time coming, but we do have to get it right. Because believe me, if you think they're going to complain any less if we wait a year to raise that price, you're wrong. And right now we have the opportunity to collect the revenue that will allow tourism to pay for tourism.
All right, thank you, Councillor Carley.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Belanger. I am in agreement of the fact, obviously, that it has been noted by staff that our fees are lower, and that it's important that we raise those fees, not even just for tourism to pay for tourism, but to ensure that that our teams have the ability to actively go out and to respond to calls, to ensure that the fees are covering the costs of our inspections. And I think that staff need to take the time to be able to formulate, to understand what those new costs are, because the fees that they're paying now were based on 2020 costs, not on 2026 costs, to regulate those businesses. But I would like to point out that the administrative monetary penalty system, those AMPS penalties are not simply for individuals who are currently licensed, who are bad actors, that who are causing nuisance in the neighborhoods. But those AMPS fees are supposed to directly address those 800 properties that are operating illegally, that haven't come in to get the license, that are not cooperating with the town. And so our hope is that those fees, and this is what was identified in the compliance software, those are the fees that would hopefully contribute back to that tourism paying for tourism. That the fees, in the sense that they shouldn't be punitive, the AMPS penalty shouldn't be punitive, everything should go back towards cost recovery, but we are placing some of those costs on the bad actors who are not licensed, not that we're only placing the costs and the recovery on individuals who have come in to license with the town and to comply with the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Any other questions or comments? I knew this was going to happen. Deputy Mayor Snell, and then we'll go to Councillor Ego.
Sorry, Your Worship, but I think, again, Carly just brought up a great point that this bylaw and fee schedule is going to permit and empower staff to not charge, but apply AMPS through their taxation which is great. So it goes direct to the property owner for those that are non-compliant and operating illegally without permission. And so now when bylaw comes, it's not just a warning. It's not just a, hey, quiet down or you're not permitted to do this. There's actually dollars behind it as well that will hopefully create better action. And are they the perfect amount? Maybe not, but they could be significant enough to at least try to shut them down versus no fees currently. And if it's my understanding, we can always review these again based on how does it go this summer. Let's apply it, let's try it, and see how it goes. Have staff come back with an early fall report in terms of what the outcome was, and then we can pivot and change direction if needed at that time. I just think it's really important that we understand, because like Carly just said, these fees can be applied to the bad actors. It's, so that is a direct response to the complaints that we hear from residents of these parties going on endlessly in the night in their neighborhoods. We can now charge them should this be passed. Thank you. Final comment.
I think I've heard that before, Deputy Mayor Snell. I think it's important to point out we have the ability to charge now as well. But it just doesn't seem to fix the problem. It doesn't go anywhere. Why? The fines that are set by the provincial courts and statute is not even close to enough to deter someone from continuing to rent. They charge much higher per night than the fines are. So I think that it's important to note that. Councillor Ego.
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Snell. She's really focused on what I wanted to say, how I'm feeling, and I agree that we move forward with it and we tweak it as we go along. And we've got the AMPs in place. I think the residents here are fed up with what goes on in their neighborhoods, so I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly, for the benefit of the public who wouldn't have read the full report, what is the AMPS fine, if you will, or penalty per day for an illegal rental?
So we set it for the first offense at $1,000, the second offense at $2,000, the third offense at $3,000. That would be applied daily. And the reason why staff have recommended that we use AMPS penalties instead of the POA, the court systems, with fines is because not only did it take too long, and it was a long and drawn out process to go through the Provincial Offences Act to lay those charges and those fines on property owners, that oftentimes it would take lots of staff time and dollars and lawyers' fees to do so, is that once staff got there, that the burden of evidence required by staff to have those charges stick was almost impossible for us to gather. And so while we do have the ability 100% to go through the Provincial Offences Act to lay those types of charges, that they are not the types of immediate rewards that the town will receive, immediate financial benefits to recovering the costs of enforcement that we would receive from daily AMPS penalties such as these. And these AMPS penalties are in line with our neighbors. They're not excessive, and we need to be careful that that we do not create penalties and fees that go against the heart of the statute that allows us to charge these fees. They can't be punitive in nature, and so we have seen some municipalities who have raised these AMPS penalty charges upwards of $10,000 to $15,000, and they're being challenged in court for that. Thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear for the public, bylaw is called because of a nuisance rental, whether it be illegal or not, and they go out and they find that the evidence is there. They lay an AMPS charge on the first time they attend for $1,000. If they have to reattend, it's $2,000 more. And if they reattend a third time, it's $3,000, and I guess it's then $3,000 per occurrence thereafter. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, I wouldn't want to say, obviously bylaw is going to have to come forward with a policy towards their enforcement and what they're going to do with that, but theoretically how it could work, and then I can also refer this back to the clerk as well, is that let's say Granicus was to pick up the fact that, you know, you're operating illegally, a letter would be sent to your property to say, you're operating illegally, maybe you did not know that, please stop. If we continue to see you operating without a license, then at that point, yes, those would be successive charges. And then once you reach that top, there would be a point at which obviously staff might say, you know, we've laid 3 of these charges on you, you're at 3, 4, you know, 3, maybe at this point you've reached $9,000 in charges and you're not ceasing. That's when perhaps they would then move to the Provincial Offences Act. And I would like to return the remainder of the question over to the clerk as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Carly. That was great. In addition, we've had the ability in the bylaw to suspend. There's the demerit point system as well, and it can ultimately end up into revocation of their license, which they would have to appeal. And if that revocation happens and it's not appealed, then they cannot apply for another license for 2 years. And then they're subject to those penalties if they're operating without a license. So there's a lot of tools in the toolbox in this bylaw that will allow us to administer this, and it aligns with the strict but fair policy that council has adopted.
All right. Before I get to you, Councillor Timms, I just have one more question I think might help us all, and that is, do we have any idea what the average, I don't know if Granicus tells us this, but what the average cost per person per night is for these rentals?
Through your worship, when Granicus launched this software, and again, these are based off of 2023-2024 numbers, we were told that the average nightly rental for a whole unit, and that could be an entire house, was $253. But that is in US dollars, so we're talking about $300 and something a night. Thank you.
And that is per night, or is that per person per night? Because I've heard...
That would be per night based off of, when we say unit, we don't always refer to one room. And again, Granicus is scraping information from all short-term accommodators. So they're looking at motels, they're looking at bed and breakfast, which obviously I'm assuming that those fees would probably be lower and therefore lowering the average rate. And obviously we will have properties in town that are charging probably, you know, upwards of $1,500 a night that they're spreading over multiple people who are sharing that accommodation.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been listening very carefully to these conversations, excuse me, and I'm certainly concerned about tourism paying for tourism, but I'm feeling that I thought my hand up was saying I was muted. I think we do need to get started with this, and I like Councillor Ego's approach that we review it. I think Deputy Mayor Snell said an early report in the fall. I think it's time that we really did get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on this matter, then? All right, seeing none, we do have a motion here. Before I go, did you wish to put forth a referral motion, Councillor? Or are you comfortable with the debate and prepared to move forward?
Given the penalties with AMPS, what I'm hearing is staff is comfortable that we would not incur costs to the general taxpayer. So I'm willing to move forward, but do support a fall review.
All right, thank you, Councillor. All right, then we do have a recommended motion that the report titled Short-Term Accommodation STA Licensing Bylaw to the council meeting of February 12, 2026 be received, and that council adopt a bylaw 2026-08 being a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern short-term accommodations in the town of Wasaga Beach, and that council direct the manager of municipal law enforcement to bring an amended administration monetary penalty bylaw to include penalties for the STA bylaw to a future meeting. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Snell and seconded by Councillor DeLeo. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Blanchet.
In favor.
Councillor DeLeo.
In favor.
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Snow.
In favor?
Councillor Timms.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Good discussion, folks. I think what's important out of this discussion is we all agree that whatever we're doing, we need to get it right. And we need to give staff the tools. By doing that and getting it right out of the gate, we're giving the staff the tools that they require to carry out not only council's wishes, but to get the job done far into the future. Item number 12 on the agenda is recommendations arising from boards and committees. We have none today. Item number 13 is council requested staff reports. Councilors, you have seen the list. Any questions or comments on any of these reports? Seeing none, moving forward to item number 14, notices of motion, we have none. And motions where notice has been provided, we have none. And then we go on to bylaws and recommended motions that the following bylaws be received and to be deemed to have read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And those are bylaws 2026-07 through and including bylaw 2026-14. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Councillor Tim, seconded by Councillor Eagle. All in favor? That motion carries unanimously. And ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned at 12:10 p.m. Have a great afternoon.